Welcome to our event today, Innovation in the Bioeconomy. My name is Alan Rennick, I'm Professor of Economics here at Lincoln. I'm also co-director of Centre of Excellence in Transformative Agribusiness, and we're really pleased to host the event today along with the local food systems cluster at University of Canterbury, and Joy Anna over there, and also with ChristchurchNZ. It's great. We had an event a couple of weeks ago, and it occurred to me actually, new people probably haven't been to our fantastic new Waimarie building. So if this is your first time, I've got two things to say. Where have you been? We've had 22 events already this year, and but also to welcome you to our new building and our new facilities. We're really excited to be able to this collaboration between UC, Lincoln, and ChristchurchNZ to bring you this program today. We've spent a lot of time thinking about what area would be good for us to cover. And I think, especially at the moment, I kind of made a bit of a facetious LinkedIn post saying some people think our economy can be based on mining and extraction at the moment. But actually, I think there's a lot of people who realise that there's a lot of economic potential in our bioeconomy, but perhaps it's a little bit more challenging to get value than rather just digging in the ground. So what we wanted to do today really was bring some stories. I think really is what we've thought about from the lab to the market, and discuss that issue of commercialisation, of innovation, and what we can learn from those who are actually at the coalface trying to do it, and also from the university sector who are around. So hopefully today we'll have a sort of broad range of stories to look at. But the other thing we really wanted to do was bring you guys together and actually give time for networking and meeting between the university, the bioeconomy sciences institutes, right? and Lincoln, but also industry and others around. So please take the opportunity. Hopefully now most of you have been able to find a badge. If you haven't got a badge, just tell people who you are and where you're from, and we can discuss. So, housekeeping, the fire alarm goes off, it's intermittent, fire exit out the back there, and we will congregate on the lawn and look at our nice historic buildings while we're waiting. Our toilets are just through here if you need them, and refreshments will be served 10:10. We have our first coffee morning tea break, and then at lunch also we will have it out in the Waimarie building. I think that's that. I'll just briefly introduce the centre, since I've got a captive audience. So this is our Centre of Excellence in Transformative Agribusiness. And really what we're trying to do is work right across the value chain to enhance the value from our food and fibre sector with fewer inputs and reduced environmental impact. And so our idea is that we obviously can't do this on our own. We're a cross-university centre, so all three faculties, science, business, etc., are involved. But we want to work in partnership, and that's part of the reason we're very happy to have ChristchurchNZ and UC involved today. And these are the areas that we work in: alternative energies, alternative proteins, circular economies, and sustainable value chains. And what we're talking about today, people should click into the circular economy and sustainable value chains as well. So this is just a brief overview of our overall programme today. Hopefully you've seen this before, so I won't take up any more time and probably get straight at 10 past. That's good, sticking to time. Go to our first speaker. I'm very pleased today to welcome Dr. Ali Rezlan-Hasmi, who is a lecturer in the School of Product Design at the University of Canterbury. And he specialises in human-centred design and innovative product development. So today he's going to be talking about a university perspective on new product development, and I think he's brought some examples for us to look at. Without any more ado, I'll hand over to Ali. Thank you.
Okay, kia ora koutou. My name is Ali. I'm from the School of Product Design, University of Canterbury. And Joya kindly asked me to present this work. And I know I have a tough job of setting the scene today. So what I prepared, actually, just finished 2 minutes ago, is just two stories from my own research and my journey. And I think I'd rather start just to tell you a little bit, if this works, yes, about myself. So my background is I'm a protein biochemist. I did a undergrad, master, PhD, and then did a couple of postdocs and a bit of work in CRI in Sion. And I did a quite range of different things, from sort of medical biochemistry, sort of pure protein science research, to food science and synthetic biology. So I did quite a range of different things, and that's how I was a suitable candidate. Fortunately, I got into School of Product Design, and currently I'm the Director of Studies of our undergraduate degree, Chemical Formulation Design. Just before I get to my research, just a few words about what I do in so our school. I don't know, for those of you who don't know, our school is relatively young school in university. We started in 2018. Really, the idea was to create undergraduate, sort of graduate students who are problem solvers, adapted, entrepreneurial. And our degree is sort of 40% science engineering, 40% design, and about 20% business and management. So it's not me. That was not me. I know a lot of faces here. Some of you may have been seeing me the first time. So this monstrosity is normally not on my face. It's for Movember. So if you want to help me remove it in 3 days, you're welcome to help the Movember Foundation. This doesn't seem to be working. So what our degree, basically, what I oversee now is the chemical formulation design side of our school, which is basically we train students how it is to mix chemical products and design products from things from, say, cosmetics, from lipstick to agrochemical products to household products, everything in between. And we have had already quite a range of graduates coming out. Some of them you might have heard if you're on the business side. So we have had people who go to the business. We have had people who work in ag research, and in different factors. But now that you know a little bit about me, so when I moved from being a pure protein biochemist, a geek who focuses on a protein that nobody else cares about, and I got the opportunity to work in the School of Product Design, I thought, oh, maybe I can actually work towards making products. And we are teaching the students how to do this. So our course is all about how to go from an idea, create a product and a final piece from that, say, idea. So I thought this would be a challenge to take on. And my general interest is around, basically, one is plastics, the other is waste. And both of them, most people here know a lot about. We know plastic is a huge problem, and especially food waste. A lot of people here work on food waste. This is actually a shocking, statistics from New Zealand that globally 40% of food that we produce goes to waste. And New Zealand, we're one of the worst. We are the worst in OECD countries from how we recover waste. So it was, I think, the first really study around what we do with our food waste and how we deal with it was just recently developed by the previous chief science advisor. And my research is really around this couple of parts, so either material recovery from waste, upcycling to new products, or potentially animal or human feed. And I'll tell you two different almost case studies. The first one I want to talk about is a bioplastic. Many of you might have heard about it. And plastic that we know, I mean, plastics are, the names are everywhere. Bioplastic is a name that a lot of people just drop around. And I usually like to just define it. So we usually, if you look from fossil fuel to bio-based, biodegradable to non-biodegradable, sort of bioplastics fit in a whole range of things. So it can be, it really doesn't like me, does it? Is it me or is it? No, doesn't like people from UC. So bioplastic just covers this both range. So it can be actually non-biodegradable bioplastic, and there's a lot of greenwashing going around this. So not all bioplastics are the same. So there are bioplastics that are non-biodegradable. There are bioplastics like PLA, which especially causes some issues in sort of recycling, because PLA is a bio-based bioplastic. It's a bio-based, but it's not biodegradable in normal composting facilities. So that's especially causes a lot of issues in places like New Zealand, which we don't have industrial composting facilities. So what I will be talking about is PHA, and that is sort of my first study. So I started by doing some research around this enzyme. PHA is a bioplastic. It's a family of bioplastic polyhydroxyalkanoates. It's created by an enzyme called PHA synthase. And I don't want to talk too much about the science. So what I just basically mentioned about it is that it's produced in bacteria. This is the image of 2 bacteria cells that inside them is filled with this bioplastic. So many species of bacteria actually create up to 98% of their body. And why they create this is not for fat storage, not fat storage, carbon storage. The same way we store fat in our tummies, they store this polyester in their body. So this has been under study for many, many years. It's biodegradable, biocompatible, has many, many sort of tick boxes that you can see and talk about. And but since it has been studied for over 50 years, hundreds of thousands of publications, but there are really, if you go on the market, there are not really much products you can see and pick up and say, oh, PHAs. And it has been the same for many, many years. So when I started in UC, so first, of course, being the nerd, my first attempt was to actually collaborate with other scientists out of our school. So this is a PhD candidate that's working on basically actually better understand, because despite we know these enzymes have been this bioplastic is on the market a lot, people know about it. Just about 4 or 5 years ago, there was the first crystal structure. So the crystal of the protein, how this protein actually regulates and makes these polymers in their body is not really well understood. So I first started studying this, and to do that, I sort of collaborated with Jody and Tim in School of Chemical and Physical Sciences in UC to try to understand how these enzymes work. On the other hand, I also worked with people, microbiologists in SBS and CAPE in UC, to actually see how do they degrade, because the other side of using a new novel bioplastic is that, as many of you know, as what we call the word rebound effect, sorry, as a rebound effect. So when you give a new novel bioplastic to the market, simply because of that rebound, people will throw it out in the field a lot more. So it's going to end up a lot more, even if we replace all our plastic today with this bioplastic, which is biodegradable, it's going to be in the environment a lot more. So one of the things that actually we need to understand is to see how would it actually affect the microbial communities, how would it affect our environment. So with Carlo and Heather and a master student, we try to sort of understand how it is, how the communities change. And these are really science studies. But then I had the opportunity to co-supervise a PhD candidate who was actually a designer. With him, we said, okay, let's actually make biocomposites, make material, make things that people can use. And so that was the challenge we took on. And just to tell you a few words about the material properties of PHAs, because a lot of people say, oh, they're brittle, they're not good, they're not blah, blah, blah. But we have done a large scale study. This is unpublished data yet, so we're in the process of publishing this as a review paper. But this is, when you look at this is a sort of recreation of an Ashby chart, which is the material property. So it shows you where material sits in the strength, in the elongation and strength. And most of our petroleum-based plastics sit sort of in this area. And you see that studying hundreds and thousands of papers online, actually PHAs are not that terrible compared to normal petroleum plastics. So definitely material properties is not why it is a lot less sort of on the market than other plastics. And so with Manu, we said, okay, let's actually study what can be the reason. And Manu's PhD work was all around understanding the perception of biocomposite. So he went around to study how is it to, if you have a biocomposite which has the perfect properties, its sustainability, its waste-based, etc., why do car companies don't use it? And we did a relatively large-scale study, so it has published in multiple papers out of his PhD. And the thing that we found is that actually the perception, how people see stuff, how people feel about it, is a lot, almost more important than the material. Because an engineer, when they want to make a car or they want to make a, and this is actually an important thing that I want to highlight because I have my fellow scientists on the side of the science that at the government now says it's not real science. So those people are sitting here. So that is science, and it's actually really important because if you have a material and nobody buys it, and the best example that I have from this research is that we took materials to people to actually ask them to put them in different, sort of categorize them. Do they like them? Do they find them natural? Do they find them artificial, etc.? And what we found is that a lot of people, a lot of these bio-based materials that have good credentials, simply the view how people look at them and don't find them valuable is one of the reasons they don't sort of come out in the market. My best example from this was we ran a study with our collaborator Jörg in Germany, and Germans are very honest people. So one of them described this biocomposite, which a company developed using millions of dollars to develop this biocomposite, but they never used it in the out of their car. It was always inside, so you could never see it. But the Germans, 5 minutes, okay, perfect. Oh, I have to go faster. So, but a German participant sort of described it as a frozen vomit on ice. So, of course, you don't want frozen vomit on ice on your dashboard, and you rather put it inside. So the perception is really important. So I just go very fast. So we developed some sort of perception-based sort of theory that maybe we can not only look at the material from the material properties, but also from the perception side. So moving on from PHA, the case study 2, which I have actually one of my students here. I promised not to say her name, so I don't say her name at this case, but she's sitting in front. It's around waste valorization. So my interest was waste valorization, and somebody from former ESR, now science, approached me, and she said, oh, we have all these larvae. Do you want to find out if you can make something with it, make a product with it? So the challenge started. So Courtney, I say you, this is the first time I'm telling your name. The second time, thank you. So just very fast about these larvae. They are fantastic in turning waste into protein, fat, and chitin melanin. So they eat almost everything, very efficient, very fast, turn whatever they eat into chitin, melanin, and fat and protein. So they're really efficient in reducing waste. So we went on a journey. I mean, when I say we, my students went on a journey and sort of tried different types of extractions, chemical, mechanical, compared the properties, and came out with a bunch of products. And again, in this case, when you have a product, which I have the examples of the product here, I'll pass it along later. We made a soap and a cleanser, for example, but we notice if people don't use it, and really the problem is the people. So if people say insect, ew, and don't want to use the thing, that's the issue. So we studied actually how it is sensory. Do people actually want to use these products? So this was really a big part of thesis that she did. And the important part, or the important message I want to say is that everything is really connected, and making a product something that people can touch in your hand is also really important. In a sense that even when Minister Retty came, so somehow Minister Retty ended up in UC a day before he came. He said, "Oh, I have free time." Emailed my collaborator Maria from School of Environmental Science, said, "Show us your colony," because weirdly, he saw this little paper that we published with some collaborators. So I was involved in that, basically just in the idea phase, and Nick did all the work. And he saw this paper, said, "Plastic, worms, this sounds really interesting." He said, "Can you show me the colony?" And then later when he went, his secretary emailed me and said, "Can you send us soap?" And then we made some soap, which I have the samples here, and send it to you use. Hopefully that brings up this in the thing. And just I want to finish up with a few words. So, I mean, my experience as a nerdy scientist, now trying to do some commercialization work, I have actually tried on the challenge by going into, last year I was a KiwiNet emerging innovator. I tried to basically get some of these biocomposite into a product. So it's a lot of challenge and a lot of work. So many of you probably are in the more sort of application and company side. It's a lot of work. So it does take a village. I always say, even in my lectures, I say everything is connected. So if you create something amazing, is amazing material, but nobody wants to use it, nobody actually finds it attractive, it looks ugly, or the minister doesn't know about it, it's not gonna work. So the whole message I have on that PHA side is that, and we're actually publishing into a manuscript, is that to make them actually more popular, it just is not enough to make the material properties better, because people have been doing it for many, many years. You have to actually work on design of proper products. You have to actually work with people to make policies, to make, the government to make it allowed, as well as the economic models. Because if even today we decide to use PHA as our replacement plastic for every plastic we have, there is not enough supply chain to provide all the world with enough bioplastic. So that's another reason. So science, economy, law, all of these have to work together if you want to make, especially these kind of changes that many of us are interested in: sustainable change, environmental impact. Those things are really connected. So, and probably the most important thing is a team. As a last thing, as one of the last messages, that I was in one of the KiwiNet presentations, and this person was saying apologies for the swear word, but he said it's okay to have a hole in your team, but it's not okay to have an a-hole in your team. So that's really the message. If you work with good people and you don't have an a-hole in your team, things can do well. So I have a lot of examples, and I will be around to chat with you. Thank you. Sorry about the click. Oh no, this one clicker for this one. This was my own. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes, went over time, so I'm happy to answer questions afterwards.
Sorry, yes, I just got to get something there. Yeah, I think because we're going to have a panel at the end, an opportunity for questions and discussion, then we'll probably say this isn't really burning clarification anyone, so we probably save the questions for the panel and the panel discussion because you've got quite a tight schedule so to get through. Okay, thanks, Sally. Thank you, Darren. That was great. Really pleased to welcome our second speaker, Gareth Innes, who's Senior Manager at Polynatural. And I want to thank Karen Bain from Scion for putting us on there. She said they've got a great story. You should get them to come and speak. He leads commercial strategy and partnerships and has a background spanning agribusiness, product development and sustainability. And he's worked a lot with research. I think he's worked with Scion in the past and maybe agri-research as well. So it's great so you can talk about the story of Polynatural and so to you actually. Thank you, Alan.
Imagine you're sitting in a vineyard in Central Otago. It's a beautiful summer's day. It's 30 degrees. You got your favourite wine, a glass of Sauv Blanc in there, and along the rows of the vines are nets. And on those nets are little clips holding them together. You're having a drink and you're having a good time and you're talking with your families, your friends, and on the ground you see a whole lot of plastic on the ground. That's because every year New Zealand uses over 30 million clips to hold on these nets. And each year they fall to the ground. Now imagine an alternative in which those clips, when they fall to the ground, they disappear. They go back to earth. They support the vines that are around them. That's not a dream, that's actually what Polynatural's developed. Oh, actually, where's the clicker? And that's what we've been developing over the past several years. The challenge that we started with is how do we protect the vineyards and plants without creating more microplastics? Sounds really easy in practice, but it's hard to put into place. Each year, as I said, 30 million vine net clips are used in New Zealand alone. That's 40 tonnes of plastic that's used for 6 weeks of the year and disappears. A recent European study that literally has only come out in the last couple of months says that they're doing an investigation into the microplastics in soil in European vineyards. And they're saying that there's between 400 to 1,300 particles per dry kg of soil. So it's a real world problem. That study is saying that it's impacting the microbial activity of the plants around them. They are going to have to run that study over several years to see what the development is. Our vision, once again, sounds quite simple. Create products that protect the plants and return safely to earth, proving sustainability and commercial viability coexist. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. The commercial viability is actually a big thing for us. So everything that we do as a private enterprise has to be commercially viable. We're not a research institute. We have to generate income, and you'll see that trend come through. But the team is small, but you'll see that it's actually bigger than this. So Tyrone's role, he's the head of design. He's the guy that every plant protector, every vine clip, every foliage clip, that's got his design signature on it. And he's the guy that puts it together. Stephen, he's our material scientist, head of R&D. He is the guru. He understands the science. He is the guy that liaises with Scion and our international partners, with ag research, and interprets the information. He sets the lab testing, the test results, and all that sort of thing. Melissa, she's our conduit to our growers and our other partners who are in the vineyards. She's the one who's developed the relationships with the vineyards. She takes the information from the testing and relays it to the team. And my role, well, we recently had a student start and I was introduced as the captain of chaos. I am the, I set the overarching strategy. I'm also in charge of the ROI. I make sure that what we do actually has a return on the investment. I protect the IP. I liaise with all the different partners. I do the contracts. And I also set crazy timelines for the team to achieve and push them. But we don't do it alone. And you'll see a common theme of polynatural is mahi-tahi. Mahi-tahi means working together towards a common goal. So we've partnered with UC, Scion, and Agri-Search, and then we've got a vast amount of international partners that we work with. Then we partner with some of the world's best vineyards. And then we've got the trust that we work with the planting. Without any of these, this wouldn't have happened. No one had the resources, no single person had the resources to do anything. So I needed a partner to scale it up. The wineries can't develop it. We can't do it. We can't develop the technology without our friends. So that's our mahi-tahi. But like every good overnight success story, it starts back in 2007. Our owner, that's when our relationship first started with Scion. And it was over something completely different. Then in 2018, Scion used our facilities to do some manufacturing. And this rather good looking young kid went out because he's a curious little nature. He's got a curious little nature to see what's going on. And he spotted an opportunity. And that's when we truly started to develop what was the vine clips at that stage. We didn't get it to commercial quantities till 2021. It wasn't really until 2023 that we started actually scaling it up to any sort of volume. And then post 2023, that's when you see the iterations of the different products with the same biotech developing and coming through. As you can see, the development wasn't linear. We would start with one material, absolutely love it in the lab, think it's the bee's knees, all get excited, high-fiving, cheering each other, go to scaling up, and it was dead in the water. We would try material, we would try and run it, we couldn't run it. Our most famous case was that we ran a material and it was so abrasive, it destroyed the machine in 2 hours. So this development, reiteration, trying new things, going out to market, going back to the lab. Anytime we had a change in variable, it meant a reset. So everything about what we did was about fast iteration, development, redo, get it back, fail, get it back, fail fast. Along the way, so the original story was Scion, we had a problem with grape mark. We still got a problem with grape mark. So the original vine clips were started with grape mark. We had to change from that. We had to pivot because we don't have the infrastructure. From a commercial point of view, the viability of extracting the water out of the grape mark meant it was cost prohibitive to go any further. Really great product, really big problem, just not commercially viable. Couldn't do it within New Zealand on the scale. We tried all sorts of things. We've had pulp and paper, we've had sawdust, we've had coffee chaff, and a whole lot of stuff, cool things that I can't talk to you about. And this is what the iteration looks like over the time. Simple little thing. Eh? It's just like a root clip. It's a simple wee design. We've actually honestly lost count of the amount of design iterations that we've done over time. That's because each time we changed a variable, we had to reset and start again. Each material had a different biodegradability, it had a different durability, And so it was a reset. So over that span of time, we've had to do multiple redos. The really most important thing is we would take this out to our partners, they would trial it, it would either succeed or fail, but through the whole process, they stuck with us. They were invested in much of the process as what we were. And man, we've had some failures along the way. Stuff in the lab, we couldn't get it to scale up. We didn't understand the temperature profiles of vineyards. So, what happens in an Australian vineyard versus to us. I mean, one year we had our product only being able to be installed up to 11 a.m. in the morning. Now, you think about it, these guys are putting the clips on, the guys putting the clips onto the vines, they're paid by clip. So if they can't do it by 11 o'clock, that's them. That's their earning potential gone. But even those guys were invested in the direction, orientation of the clip, loose, all that. So just a simple little thing in the amount of design iterations that we've gone through has been quite incredible. You reached a goal when you get feedback like this. The perfect product, each clip does what it needs to do whilst being environmentally friendly. So that's Derek from Cloudy Bay Vineyards. So these guys were giving us feedback, and then when we hit that, we knew we were on to a winner. Over the impact of these developments. So far this year, so since April, our financial year runs from the 1st of April, we've replaced 9 tonnes of plastic. And every day that's growing with our product range. So there's a significant impact going through for that. We were finalists of the High Tech Awards this year, which we're really proud of. It was a great event. We're now exporting around the world. In fact, we've got a whole lot of pallets about to leave and go across to Australia. Our products have ended up in UK. Who would have known that the vineyards in the UK was growing, and South Africa and North America. So and that's through word of mouth. That's because people have been in New Zealand, they've used our product, then they've gone back home, and then they've said, you've got to start using this product. And we've now got 8 products in post-launch phase. So we're now doing plant protectors, vine halos, foliage clips, and net clips, and a whole heap of products that have in development. Our biggest thing through this journey has not actually been a demand issue. People want this. They don't want to pay for it, but they want it. They see the benefit of it. But our thing through this whole process has been going, right, this one's a winner, we can do this. No, we can't do that. And that's where my job comes in tomorrow. This is my piece of advice with the mahi-taki. If you're a researcher, find your manufacturing partner early and find an end user early. Too many times we've been involved with startups and development, can't scale it up, can't get it to market, or it's just too expensive. Each time that's happened, we've had to reset. With our international partners, a lot of them are startups themselves. So they will get funding, Series A, Series B, and then the money will run out. So then that's when we've had to reset. If you're a business, find your research partner. So, for us, having our mahi-taki, no one has the resources to do this by themselves. So you need to do a collective effort with it. And, with the growers, for them, this is a multi-million-dollar industry. If these fail on their vines and those nets and the birds get into the nets, that's their livelihood at risk. So for them to risk that and trial that with us was really impressive. it's the stereotypical hockey stick. So what happens is that the growers normally buy a box, which is 20,000. They try it at 20,000 for the year. The next year they will come back. They might buy 100,000. Then the following year they'll come back and they'll buy pallet loads, millions of the clips, because to build that trust factor, who are we? What are we? What are these Fandangle products? Doesn't matter what we say, it's the real world testing and iteration that grows the confidence. And the bioeconomy needs us all working together. So, as I keep on saying, mahi tahi, without everyone in there working together, there is no way this would have happened. And this is, I've rushed through this, but this is the where to contact and find information. And I guess I've got heaps of time for questions. Thank you.
We have a couple of minutes if anyone would like to ask.
So biodegradation is really key. So what you're doing, measuring biodegradation rate, takes ages, and you've got product development cycle where you want to change and reiterate and stuff. That must have been really difficult to. So does it degrade enough, or were you able to accelerate that? Or
yeah, we do accelerating testing. We also do real world testing because it's lab results to the real world. Because one of the things is lab's perfect world, right? And for this material to biodegrade, it's very much about the environment. It's about the microbes in the soil. It's about the environment, the temperature, the rain, and all that, and whether it's healthy. So, these laboratory testings. The other day for shits and giggles, I ran a testing data through AI to compare it against a lab test to see what would happen. We do accelerated testing, but the really most important thing is the feedback from the people on the ground and seeing. And we would go back and see and have a look and see what happens. I'm not the science guy. I'm just the headache giver. But in my office is fish tanks. We had two. One ecosystem collapsed, but we've got one going at the moment. And in there is a time-lapse camera, and I've got a plant protector in there and just measuring the biodegradability of it. It's about as unscientific as you can get it because it's been set up by me, but that's the sort of approach we take. It's like, well, if it biodegrades for me, it will biodegrade in the real world. So yeah, we do a whole lot of testing around that sort of thing. We get very, very nervous. As time's gone by, there's, we're talking about greenwashing before. Because of the nature of the agreements, IP and stuff, sometimes in the past it's been quite difficult for us to identify exactly what's in the product. So Stephen is your stereotypical reserved, he doesn't mind me saying this, cautious engineer type. So that's why he does a heck of a lot of reading into stuff and doing testing and stuff, because making sure that the product does what it says is the most important thing for us.
Two very quick questions. Let me
Hi, I'm Kelly. I just have a question for that list around, finding, if you're a researcher, find a manufacturer. It seems like there's something missing with the investor piece. How were you able to get your investors, people who could agree with that vision and see through along that journey from 2007 to now?
Everything's been done, we call it the junkyard challenge. Anyone watch that old UK where you used to pull things together? Everything's done on an oily rag. We've been really lucky in the fact that at one stage the Canadian government was supporting one of our partners, and so they did a whole lot of testing and paid for that for us. It has been a complete, we are doing it under a constrained environment. Very, very lucky to have a supportive owner who's supporting and allowed us to run with that. So yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, maybe just have one. This is the last question.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's undeniably better, but does anyone really care? Why would they switch? There's obviously like a massive behavior change. You're producing the same utility. What are they using your biodegrading clay in any way? Like, what do they get in addition to just it works and it's nice?
It's because it's the growers, you know, they know and they see. So the vineyard managers, the soil quality is the most important thing for them, you know, to get the vineyard. They see the plastic around, they see it on the ground. You know, it's like most people in this industry. They know it's a problem, they want a solution. We've even been on trade stands and competed with product people who have sold those clips, who've come up to us and said, this is great, this is fantastic, this is what we want to do. It's an intergenerational thing. So at the same trade stand, we had a father and son literally come to blows over it. Dad was like, we don't need this, we've done this for years, you know, I don't need it. Son's like, no, this is what we're doing. I'm in charge now, this is what we're doing. And this is what, you know, where it's at. But yeah, we've got to be on commercial. We've got to make it commercially viable for them to make the switch. It's got to do what they need it to do. It's got to do the job to be done. And it's got to be as good, if not better, than what they're using. So the foliage clip, which was up there, that's actually better than a petrochemical alternative at the same cost. But you've got to give them a convincing, you know, argument for them to make that change.
Maybe just ask a question. Yeah, okay, one.
Yeah, I was going to say your success seems to be a really testament to the hyper focus that you've had on the problem and the product that you've been developing. I'm sure at the early stages you must have had a bit of tension in terms of other applications for this material and other opportunities. How did you manage that and maintain your focus?
That's my role. So we've got a balanced scorecard that we use. So we've got better at it. So literally when it started, it was like, hey, that's cool, I can see a market for that. Now we do like jobs to be done analysis. We look at what the alternatives are. We look at the market size. We do market research. We did none of that at the beginning. We just went, hey, this is cool, let's do it. So now we have a scorecard. So I think we've got 18 products that we could potentially go with. But at times we've walked away from major projects in which people have gone, please, 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 can you do it? But we only want to pay X amount for it. And we've gone, no, we can't get to that. We can't get to that price point. We can see this isn't going to work. And that's caught, you know, so there's continuous tension with that and that side of things. So yeah.
Thanks very much. I'd like to welcome our third speaker, Dr. Rob Kelly from TEO. They're basically a Christchurch-based company advancing natural product extraction. He leads their research and innovation program, focusing on sustainable high-value extraction. So really looking forward to hearing your story as well. Don't rush, we're still a little bit of a coffee break, so take
Sure.
your time.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk. So, kia ora koutou, I'm Rob Kelly. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer and one of the co-founders of Tertiary Extracts TEO. I'm also the Group Manager at Lincoln Agritech for the New Materials and Biotechnology Group, and something I know from that role also. So I'm going to tell you about what TEO is, a bit of a thumbnail sketch of this new company and our path from lab to market and some of the lessons that we've learned along the way that might be useful as we think about commercialisation in the bioeconomy. So first of all, our why we're here, why does TEO exist? So TEO is a women's health company. Our why is to improve women's health, quite pure and simple. women spend 25% more of their lives in poorer health than men. They live longer and have a hormonal roller coaster through their lives, that changes their physiology in a way that men just simply don't have. Despite that, most of the supplements and wellness products on the market are designed for and researched on men, and just made smaller. That's just simply not good enough. Women's health demands and deserves precision solutions, and that's what we're here to deliver. This is the women's health market is a $40 billion market. As a subsection of that, the age and stage specific nutrition is about $1.25 billion. So our why is to improve women's health, address issues such as cognitive challenges, metabolic health, and so on, as we describe on the slide. And if we all understand, we all should understand what postmenopause means. Perimenopause and postmenopause. In 2030, there'll be 1.2 billion women in postmenopause, and that's very significant and a very important point. We only get a few chances to make a difference in the world, and we're choosing this one. So how do we do this? So we do this by using knowledge in sheep-derived proteins, so protein science and how those proteins affect our body's metabolism, specifically they affect women's body's metabolism. We do that also using a patented process that we've developed for isolating bioactives from sheepskins. We do this using our connections to the global nutrition and functional foods markets and how to access those markets. And we do that using our access to the world's best and most ethically sourced and most traceable farming systems, which we have here in New Zealand. Those things combine to form both a technical and a geographical moat around our company. So what do we do? Or what we actually do is we deliver Overcharge, which is a bioactives platform that isolates all of the bioactives from waste sheepskins. So from lipids to proteins to vitamins, all of these fascinating components that are in sheepskin, and we use those components to improve women's health. We isolate these from some of, and potentially all of, the 6.5 million waste sheepskins that New Zealand produces each year. What's the connection? So sheepskins contain proportions of proteins, peptides, certain lipids, certain vitamins that are very active in women's physiology to a much greater extent than is present in other source material. And illustrated by example, vitamin D is one of the most common supplements in women's health, and a lot of most of the world's vitamin D comes from grease from the wool that's in sheepskins. So just an example. There's numerous others in there. So as a result of all of that, we're at the intersection of women's health, precision nutrition, and upcycling. And as a result of that, we believe we're improving the sustainability profile of the New Zealand primary sector. So the way that we do this is through two routes. We do this through the Overcharge branded ingredient portfolio. So this is a business-to-business offering, a set of products primarily for export to the global supplements, functional foods, and related wellness products markets. So that's the main core of our business. But we also do this through the Every Woman range. So there's a range of business-to-consumer products, women's wellness and lifestyle brands, and that's sold domestically. This achieves many ends. It keeps us connected directly to our ultimate consumers, who are the brand's customers. So are well connected to the needs of women's health through this. And it also demonstrates to our brand ingredients, our customers, how to use the technology, and an example of how well it can be presented. So what's been our path to market, and what have we learned from that? So our path to market starts in market. There's the bit here talking about lab to market. We don't start in the lab; we start in the market. So the founders of the business have spent 10 years or more working together, creating and launching high-value dietary supplement and personal care ingredients products globally. And by value, that value is derived from the fact that the ingredients developed have high and well-proven function and performance, and that's really essential as part of that process. So during that time, during that history, in the market, we've seen growing demand and unmet need in the women's health area. And we also saw the exploding proteins market, with the global protein demand just going through the roof in every aspect of nutritional products. And New Zealand largely missing out on this. So walking the floor of trade shows and talking to customers and so on, and seeing people wanting protein, and very little, not something you can tell, very little ingredients type offerings from the New Zealand sector. Looking back in New Zealand, so looking back to our home base, we saw lots of material opportunities. So proteins and bioactive sources either not being used at all, or being traded as commodity items, frozen, maybe dried, fifth quarter components that we know that New Zealand science can add so much more value to. Now, New Zealand does some of this already. It's not like we don't do any of this. Of course, we do some, but we can do so much more. If we're going to double the value of exports, which the government wants us to do, we're going to be doing it by putting more logs on the wharf. We're going to be doing it by adding value to what we're doing. So there's this large opportunity out there to add value to what we make so well. We also identified that the changes in the leather market and inertia in the meat companies, they might seem kind of actually related, but they're not obviously connected to what I'm talking about. But so changes in those two things, the leather market and inertia in the meat companies, meant that many companies were paying to have, or either paying to much of their 6.5 million waste sheets in view to get taken away, or deriving no value from them whatsoever. And this is whilst there's a multi-billion-dollar protein industry going, specifically collagen industry growing internationally. The awareness of collagen is growing very, very significantly. So growth rates for the market are significant, and that's largely on the back of factory farmed cows farmed on clear-felled Amazonian rainforest. So we look at that. So here's an example, just for a media piece that digs into that by the Pulitzer Center, obviously a very prestigious media organization. So we look at that and say, look, the world is destroying the planet to get protein, and we're throwing it away. That's, to us, that was madness, but also an opportunity. So our path then from there, having realised the opportunity possible, and knowing what's available to us in the biological resources that we've got, we searched for facilities to undertake commercial scale biological added value processing. So when I say commercial scale, I mean at a scale beyond what say Food South or the Food Innovation Network can do, which is it's a fantastic network, but scale beyond that, or beyond what the university network can do. Some companies obviously exist in this area doing added value biological processing, but they're making and selling their own products. So think mussels, kiwi fruit, etc. So they're busy doing their own things. There's not many of them actually in the scheme of things, and they're very busy doing their own things. In 2024, we did a capital raise, a small capital raise, put our livelihoods on the line, and acquired an old gelatine factory in central Christchurch. It's a very rare find, so we've been searching for some years. We first got together as a group to really consider this seriously in 2021. So in 2024, we see this opportunity, a very rare find. So it's a site that has a water take and a trade waste consent that's sufficient for commercial scale biological processing. So when we're thinking about lab to market and commercialization, having that is essential. There's nothing technical about that. It's a council and a resource consent issue, but if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to process it. So that's if we hadn't been able to access that, that would have, if we'd have had to build from scratch, the amount of money needed for that and the time taken to do that would have killed the opportunity dead. So as in terms of things that we've got to consider to build a bioeconomy, then that's really important. So kind of that was lesson number one for us, really. Lack of facilities is an issue for commercializing bio-based innovations. What happens after the lab and after the fantastic facilities in the Food Innovation Network or some of the other small, they're called pilot facilities, but in many cases they're kind of too small to consider anything commercial. What happens after that? If you've got to raise a lot of money to even get started, then that puts a big roadblock in place. Lesson number two, and kind of number 3 and 4 and until today, is that accessing that capital to do something is domestically, as onshore, is hard. I'm sure many people have experience of that. So our company experience is that yes, we have been able to access some capital. It's been really difficult. And as soon as we've gone offshore and talked to people in other markets, we've had some recent efforts in overseas, in Singapore, for example. I think maybe Travis might be telling us a little bit more about the recent conferences and so on in Singapore. That would indicate to us that there's much more capital available offshore, and it's much easier to access. And that's a risk for growing the New Zealand bioeconomy. That's a real concern. Right, where did the lab come in? And our lab's a market story. So we've talked a lot about the market. So after some initial support from Callaghan and from the Arohia Trailblazer grant, for small trial work and some market assessment, we secured an AgMart grant and undertook an R&D project with the excellent team at Lincoln Agritech. I've obviously declared conflict of interest there, but they're an excellent team. And we set to develop a scalable process for isolating all these bioactives from the raw material. So there's a lesson here as well. So the Lincoln Agritech team worked alongside the company beyond the lab. So they didn't hand over a report and a set of samples and say, "Look, there you go, good luck." They got into our factory, they scaled up the process with us and made sure that the innovations that they developed were commercializable from the beginning, and worked with us all along the way to do that and make sure that it was implemented. So the next lesson for us was the science providers being really flexible to the needs of the client, and in this case us, was really key, and Lincoln Agritech did and does that very well. We've always known that we have to be a high value product. We'll never compete on price, and we're not really interested in doing so. Our value proposition is based on the science of function and performance. And New Zealand has great scientists, and we can prove that out with the products that have been developed in various areas. But and there's many of those great New Zealand scientists in the room today, but we've got a massively underfunded science system. So opportunities for non-dilutive funding are very hard to come by. We've had some success with that, as on the screen, so a bit of AgMart and Callaghan and so on, and that's fantastic. But not when we have had areas where we haven't been successful as well. That essentially that over competition. So when we haven't been able to get work funded, for example, to look at bioactivity of some of our peptides, then life's short, we've got our livelihoods online here, we've got everything around. So we've gone overseas, we've done that work overseas much more quickly, and it's, I guess, it's more effective. So a lesson here, I think, is that markets and innovation aren't going to wait for the New Zealand science system to figure out how to fund science better. There's just not enough time. We'd run the risk of being left behind. People innovate and move on. So validation, and where are we at now? So we filled off our first truck or products for export in late 2024, and exports have continued since then. Women's health was the key topic at our US launch, which we did recently at a global ingredient supply trade show. As were peptides, and we have both of those things. So the market validation there was very significant. We have both of those things backed with the science to connect them and command value. So in interest of timing, so our final lesson really was that we started life by identifying our needs in the market and being confident in them. And that remains the focus of the business. What are the market needs that we can address? How can we prove that we address them to ensure that what we provide is functional and valuable, because we have to operate at the high value end of the market to where there's real demand to be successful. Along the way, we've created 20 new biotech jobs in Christchurch, and we've converted around 600 tonnes of sheepskin waste from zero value to high value. So if that's all we ever achieved, then I feel pretty good about that, to be honest. Thank you for your attention.
Rob, that's excellent. We're going to probably go into a break now. So if you have a specific question for Rob, which you can ask during the break, or save it for the panel discussion. I'd just like to, so I forgot to say, thank UC, the Local Food Systems Cluster, who are providing the catering today. So it's great for us not have to pay, so fantastic. But please enjoy your scone, and Joy's even added extra sweet treats for the guests today, so it's great. So coffee and tea will be just around to the left, and we're reconvening at 22 for the rest of the programme. But thanks for a great start to speakers for the first session. I hope you had a good time with the scone or sweet treat. We just move into the second session of so we've got two more speakers, and then we will have a panel discussion. And I think lots of questions have been coming up over coffee and tea. Actually, it'd be good to go into something more depth in the panel. But before that, I'd just like to introduce Melissa Bear. Sorry, who I love this bit about you. You're sort of a farmer, technologist, entrepreneur, social scientist, futurist, and high performance athlete. Now, it's quite a combination, I think. I don't think I need to say any more about you.
Hello, I'm Melissa. Funny accent's Canadian, just not to be mistaken for the other part. I'll go into, this is meant to be provocative, just so strap yourself in, shift your mindset as to kind of what we're going to talk about. My hope is today that I'll have you think about things that in the world of New Zealand, where we're like quite a small population, and I come from a place where a bit bigger population, quite spread out, but neighboring even bigger population. There's a different type of competitive nature, and so the kind of like need to differentiate, stand out, is quite different to here. So that's the lens that I'm going to bring. And in New Zealand, I find we kind of like to tell each other nice stories, but we kind of forget who we're talking to sometimes. So yeah, what he said. Just a little bit about me. I have been in this business, and unfortunately, for a very long time, or fortunately, depends on, I was born into an organic farm. And so in the 80s and 90s, my dad was trying to differentiate on the global market and selling organic soybeans into the EU, dealing with all the market access issues, and then doing holistic management as well. So that meant putting cows through behind soybeans. And then I got to be of age where I was somewhat useful. And about 13, we started to build a business about how might we sell organic grass-fed beef to consumers. So I'll leave it to you to determine how long I've been in this business, but it's been a while, and legitimately actually developing various types of businesses from agriculture, tourism, feeding people 3 days a week for 4 years in the summer, and educating about what the heck happens on farm, and getting like kind of a PhD in the real distance that we get from farmer, trying to translate my Amish Mennonite dad into, white stilettos and, office people of Tech Valley of Canada, which is Waterloo. So that's kind of my experience. And now we run a software company. The reason we started as a software company is because I believe that there's a way that technology enables stuff, kind of big question mark still there for me. Lots of ways that it can enable stuff, lots of ways that it's a distraction. And we're spinning out a product to make it easier to access markets and bring that cost down for processors and brands to be able to tell a really good story overseas. So we'll go through it. I think so I meant to talk about blockchain today, and I will address that. I'm going to put the technology in the background for a moment, because I think in order to be able to know how to drive the tools and drive the machines, are you accessing a hammer and nail, or are you accessing a nail gun? What are you going to do with that, and what are you going to build is sort of first what you need to figure out. Otherwise, you become obsessed with technology and forget what the objective is. So this really was a light bulb moment when we were trying to figure out, telling the story of why our beef was better than other people's beef. And no one cared, because they were like, well, I don't know, I buy it from the supermarket. So the enemy of innovation is apathy. And so there is a lot of apathy, an increasing amount of apathy, combined with an increasing amount of distrust. So how do we get through that, cut through that noise? A lot of my work when I go to America at the moment in the regenerative brand space, which is on hyper speed, they still have the problem. Now there's 6 brands on the shelf at Whole Foods that are verified regenerative, and no one knows what it means, and no one knows why they should pick it. And that's the same problem that they've had forever. So how do you cut through the noise? And that is becoming quite different. So what's changing, and is anything changing, and do we care? So the way products reach consumers is changing. How do you get the information? So it used to be that if you had the right place in the street corner, location, you got footfall and you got customers. And then you have to have the right place in the digital world, which is Facebook and Google. And if you had the right place in the digital world, you won customers. And now we're into LLMs. How do you get the right place in an LLM? What is equally exciting and terrifying for me in this moment is that I've been, using my experience, but also in the modern world, saying brands really fail to understand the pre-decision space. So we kind of mix up, do customers care, right? Like, do customers care? Do you care about the health of your food? Do you care about where it comes from? Like, why? And so the research is really quite mixed on that. What we don't have the ability to see is in the time and your rest and digest time of, like, when I'm sitting on the couch, having a play, having a think, talking to my mate. And that's now possible with LLMs, because what they have realized they solve is the loneliness epidemic. Frightening that you're going to talk to your LLM before you're going to talk to your mate. Different topic. However, at the moment, that's what's happening, is people are starting to put their, dearest held secrets and desires into LLMs. If we as brands don't understand that, we have no hope getting to reaching what their desires are. How do we structure our story in a way that meets their desires? I'll also say it's a post-truth world. Those in academia, probably this is what pulls your hair out. It doesn't matter what the science says, unfortunately. And we're seeing that in, like, large display in the red, blue, and white. And increasingly, it's more about who's the squeakiest wheel and who is perceived to be trusted. And so how do you cut through a post-truth world? Add to that an increasingly lack of awareness about how our food is grown, and actually about our health. So what is good for me at the moment versus what someone says is good for me. Should I be keto or should I be paleo at the age that I am and the activity level I am, or should I just go carb loading? And there's research to support all of that, right? So you now got a consumer that's overwhelmed, information coming at like a fire hose of information. How do you make any decisions? That's the nature, that's the game we're playing. How I said how consumers make decisions and how claims are substantiated. So if we're going to go and make a claim, again, you can have all the claims in the world, and this is what we're starting to see in the regenerative space. You can have the most trusted, verified, claim in the world. New Zealand has to play that game probably more than anyone, because we sell to on average 80 countries, and it's to various retailers, and they all have their own version of good, and we have to meet those requirements. So we're like weirdly really good at smushing our story into whatever block it needs to look like. However, we need to do that at scale, and we need to do that with data, because what has happened, I don't know if you've noticed it, but coming from the organic industry, we were sort of like the first kid on the block of we're going to differentiate somehow, and then just everyone came after that. So you have the fair trades, and then functions of the fair trades, and then the B Corps, and then now the distrust, so all of this is ramping up, and our only current solution is to add another certification, and you'll see that kind of coming at a pace that is next level. It is a little bit analog. Let's get a paper process, put a person in boots, and go check out some stuff. Is that trusted or is that not trusted is now the case. And with an increasingly distant consumer in context, from Saudi Arabia to Ireland to Canada to America, and you're like, but we're grass-fed and we're better. No one has any understanding about that. What does that actually mean, and what does it mean to me? Why should I care? And then there's the table stakes. Have you ever heard the term all of the cakes are glazed in a cake shop now? So previously you'd go into a cake shop and the most expensive ones would be the glazed cakes, and you would just get the boring old not glazed cakes, and that was the differentiating factor. Well, now all the cakes are glazed. So what's the differentiating factor? So as the barriers to entry go up, and these are the sort of like non-tariff trade barriers that we're talking about, and you see it in Europe a lot, all the cakes are glazed. In the US, almost the polar opposite, sort of a west, and you can make anything up there and varying degrees of substantiation. What's exciting about that, though, is that there's more space for winning. So those that do differentiate and do make an effort to substantiate do actually win. So I just want to give you a little bit of like a pause, look for signal, not noise, right? These are a few things that have happened like in the last month. I was at a Spark Accelerate event, and the head of business AI, she was amazing. I mean, she said this really funny thing, just a side story. She said Silicon Valley is back to 996. Does anyone know what 996 is? 9 hours a day. 9 to 9, 6 days a week. So I know the whole collective like business community of Auckland went like it was fascinating, because that's like kind of how China has operated for a long time. So she was just very provocative. But what she said, and what just boggled my mind, she said that they're now able to do targeted ads to a niche of one. So they're trialing it with a hair care product, and the end user of the Facebook marketplace Facebook can interact with that in their own unique way. So and the content is unique to them. So like wrap your head around that. That's what AI allows us to do. So if you had to spend X amount of money to do a fancy design, go back to fields, get sheep grazing in the meadow, and then be able to pull that into some sort of content. Think about the cost and time. And now they're able to do targeted to you, based on what they know about you, and they know a lot, what you want to see. And they can generate content and make it compelling and targeted. That's game changing. We did a piece of work in COVID. What else were you going to do? And we put an augmented reality experience on an Allbirds shoe, and we said, well, hey, Allbirds could tell the story in a real personalized way, and it meant that you scan a QR code and you get taken with your phone in the shop. What is your preference? And you get taken down the journey that is relevant to you. You get to pick which one you care about. So Facebook's got caught up to us now. So that's kind of like game changing. I think the Walmart and Shopify, you can now search all of their repositories through LLMs. So as a customer, I can go, please tell me the best perimenopausal nutrition product for me because of this exercise in this part of the world, and these are I'm allergic to this shit. Then I'm going to either get you or I'm not going to get you, right? And so that's on some of the biggest platforms in the world that you can now specially bespoke search for the things that are special to you. I'll add to the fact that, and we're trialing this, you can now integrate your wearables. So what your Whoop knows about you, what your Oura Ring knows about you, and what your Facebook target ads know about you, and then just go like, can you just tell me what I should buy? It's Tuesday, I have no money, payday's on Wednesday, what am I buying? Right, it's contextual, it's real time, it's based on what you need. And if you add your gut stuff in there, your food marble and your 23 and 20 biome, you now got a very personalized, how does this meet my requirements? And this is not somewhere down the track, that's happened. The other thing is the wearables. So your wearables are going to be smarter than you now. And the fact that they can do the LLM function on your tiny little watch is just mind-boggling for what that means about how consumers will make decisions about food. So what does this mean? In New Zealand, we largely sell ingredients. Is that fair? So we have to ask the question: how do we become visible? How do we become, undeniably, no one can get rid of us. So how are we the thing that actually is the part that a brand is going to use? So I don't see a lot of hero ingredient, great, but there's not a lot of that hero ingredient strategy that goes on. How do we provide sort of content as a service or differentiation as a service is going to become harder and harder. And your customers are playing that game of how do you distinguish yourself on the shelf. And so the machine is going to need to be fed. I would say value is now harder to do. So like you said, all the cakes are glazed, and value is a skill. Value is a marketing, a perception, social science skill. It is not necessarily an academic skill. I controversially say that the way to best utilize our students is to actually put them in our meat and dairy companies and just corner them and say, you have access to all of our resources, but you have to build something new. That would be the thing. So what to do about it? Productization, I think that's a skill again. Emerging niches. So again, who's targeting the people with the wearables? And what do they know about that? And that seems like it's kind of sluggish at the moment. Where is it going? Have we looked at that? And get serious about data. I think our cost of production is going to have to come down, and I don't think that should be at the expense of the farmer. So we have to look at other ways around the farmer that comes down. This is doing the same thing, expecting a different result is a recipe for insanity. And I've been here 10 years, so limited experience, but I do see a lot of largely the same things with a slightly different bent happening. And so I'd implore you to think about how do you actually leverage data? How do you do things a bit different? How do you be bold? Because it does take a bit of courage to stand up and say, this is interesting. And no doubt every Kiwi will probably tell you what a load of shit. And this is what it's going to take to actually stand out in the marketplace. For what we are doing about it from a, what do I do? We're doing everything from like, how do we just make your systems more efficient? We're also working really hard at, so that can be bespoke solutions and apps for farmers, for your end consumers to make it, so buyers to make it easy for them to search your data. We're automating a lot of auditing. How does that make it easier for the farmer? How does that reduce the burden and the cost? But also substantiate using data, because that's the sort of future of where we're.
Questions if anyone?
Not the hard ones.
That's looking this
Yeah.
This is all very interesting. I'm curious what your thoughts are on keeping the system honest and that people aren't the days of it manipulated to push people in a different direction.
That is the question. I don't think we've come up with good answers. Even the blockchain doesn't have that answer. So I think it's going to be a very monumental fight to be able to be trusted and continuously back up. And we've seen that green hushing era. Have you heard about this? Where people say stuff and they're like, oh, I don't, that's too scary. And then because that requires a lot of like backing that up. So It is a post-truth world. That is where we're at. I think the ones that win, and I heard this said by someone who was meat packers in America, the ones that cut and pack, that's it, are not winning, and their margins are eroding. The ones that cut, pack, educate, provide value are the ones that are winning. So I think, unfortunately, you know, I've been doing educational marketing my whole life. Now that's the funnel has to get bigger at the top, and you're going to get them earlier before they even know about you, and you have to bring them into that journey way before, because trust as a social science psychological concept is like bits of information over time that are consistent and like mostly to your subconscious. And so how do you do that in a distant supply chain? And how do you produce consistency of message over time, regular, with your consumer that's like running at messages coming at them?
Thanks, Sue. Just reading an article, I think, an interview with the CEO of the blackcurrant company yesterday, and the challenges that have if people start to doubt the scientific claims you're making. And I thought there's a really interesting story there about that and about green hushing, I suppose, and other things like that. Our final speaker today, I'm very delighted to welcome Professor Travis Blair, who's CEO of Lincoln Agri-food. The reason we kind of have this session is Hamish, when we were discussing land today, thought it'd be really interesting. At the time we were discussing it, the Asia Pacific Agri-Food Innovation Summit was occurring. And I think it follows on a bit from what Melissa was saying about us, I guess, maybe repeating kind of bits the same things here in New Zealand over time. And so we thought it would be great to have an insight from that summit about what's going on out there and how that might influence us. So look forward to hearing from Travis. Thank you.
Talk about being set up.
Yes.
They gave me this title. So insights, possibly, but I was there.
Yes.
So Anya and I were lucky enough to go to the Asia Pacific Agri-Food Innovation Summit, supported by KiwiNet. It's a very interesting meeting, and it's part of a week in Singapore where there's like 11,000 people from around the world going for a series of different summits and conferences on food-related topics. Ours was one of the small ones, 800 people attending, but 200 speakers or panel participants. There were felt like hundreds of companies there. I think it was 60 plus companies. And a lot of it is about not just the talks that are going on, but it's about the one-on-one meetings, as I'll explain. The key themes that they put up at the start are here, and you can see that it covers an awful lot of the food innovation space, but all the way through to things like innovative investment in agricultural finance. So it's not just concentrating on either the science or the market. It's pretty holistic in what it covers. And I'll come back to this at the end, how that looks. This was the company list. So I put this up because I'm only one person, spent a lot of time in one-on-one meetings, so I didn't catch up with an awful lot of these companies. So insights, maybe. But you can see you've got media, you've got research and academia, consultants, you've got technology equipment providers, biotech companies, all the way through to the food brands and agribusiness government. You've got the startups, which was actually a major part of it, and then investment and finance. Okay? So this is all in one place and all talking together. And I started to think about what I really took away from it. I'll start right with the keynote presentation, because one of the things that I found very enlightening was the government in Singapore has a very clear idea of what the country is doing, and it articulates it very well. So Grace Fu is the minister responsible for trade. She was very, very clear. It was a very clear talk. You came away knowing exactly what they were doing. Now, interestingly, they started in about 2018 with a 30 by 30 policy. They were going to be 30% food self-sufficient by 2030. They're now saying that was aspiration. So we're not going to make it. So very clearly not going to make it. So what is our strategy? So Singapore Food Story 2, which is going to drive what Singapore itself is looking for in the next 5 years, is about ensuring they have sufficient food supply in times of disruption. So COVID really scared Singapore silly. Okay, you're also talking about a country of like 5 million people, basically with no resource, very little land, import all their power, have to recycle most of their water. So they are very resource constrained. How are they going to feed these people? Complement local production with other food strategies, and they have 4 pillars. So growing local is still something they want to promote, but as the minister said, it's not about growing everything. They're not going to grow rice in Singapore, which is something that they have to import. They just don't have the land, they don't have the way to do it. So it's about helping farmers manage their production costs for crops they grow now. It's about funding farmers to build capability. So here the government is actually going to support to try and develop more capability in their farming systems. Strengthen the supply resilience on inputs. So whether it's fertilizers or whether it's other inputs, they need supply chains for those, they recognise, and enhance the offtake, which means sellable product. Diversify their imports. So their networks of partnering with industry and other governments around the world. What's really interesting, and it goes with the last one too, global partnering. And New Zealand was the example that the minister gave. So we just signed this essential supply trade agreement with New Zealand. It's very much about having these agreements with a lot of countries so that if Brazil has an outbreak of bird flu, they have another way of getting their chickens. Okay? And stockpiling, which I thought was very interesting for a government to actually say they're going to stockpile food. So to better respond to increasing interconnectedness in agri-food trade, Singapore have also further developed the 4th pillar of global partnerships. Very important for them, this relationships. So that's why there were so many people from around the world in Singapore for this event, because this is a meeting place of the market, not just for Singapore, but for other countries, especially throughout Southeast Asia. Little picture down there, the conference venue was the bottom one. We were on the 4th floor of this conference venue. There was an insurance conference on the floor below us that had a lot more people. So we're obviously all in one game. New Zealand was quite prominent at the conference. Diana Reach, who's the Associate Deputy Director General of Trade for New Zealand, was on one of the early panels. Belinda, who's actually based in Australia, but I thought I'd adopt her because she was also on a panel, and Mark Piper, who was the Bioeconomy Science Institute's transition CEO, had a speaking slot there. And there was a lot of other people there. TEO were there, for example. So obviously people are taking advantage of this. Some of the themes. Obviously supply chain resilience came up a lot. And it's crop-specific supply chain. So they're quite differentiated in how they're looking at it. There's a focus on startups from around the world. So there's a lot of startups there trying to pitch what they've got to the world and to Southeast Asia. Alternate proteins, AI-powered peptide discovery, precision fermentation came up a lot. Waste valorization, food technologies highlighted novel, high value and specialty ingredients. So there was a lot of ingredient to ingredient type companies there. So whether it was an alternate protein or whether it was a microbial source protein, how to actually get those into market to replace things. Biotechnology, of course, latest innovation, but also adoption of biological and sustainable inputs. So from New Zealand's point of view, we're actually quite good at things like biocontrol. Of course, that's my own passion, so that's why I've got to bring that up. There is a market in Southeast Asia for sustainable inputs. Then you get to the role of fintech, regenerative practice, robotics. All these came up as themes, and precision agriculture. But it was very much around resilient production systems. Came back time and time again to resilient production. And the last one, healthy longevity and gut health, very much focused on human nutrition, human health, especially with aging populations. So the food innovation, algae and microbes came up with a lot of companies looking at alternate source of protein for humans. New agricultural and aquatic culture applications and value chains built around these. There was a lot of companies pitching their particular algae or microbe based product and how it fits into the supply chain. Okay. I was interested that there was quite a lot of talking about new breeding for climate resilient crops. And for interest to this audience, it is very much about Southeast Asia and the climate changes there. And so there's a lot of companies looking at, can we breed crops that are resistant to temperature change and resistant to drought and floods, for example. The last one here, both strong competition and clear opportunities for collaboration. So that was coming up a lot. There's a lot of companies in this space, but there's a lot more focus on collaboration than I'm used to seeing. So companies were talking about actually working with other companies to supply Southeast Asia. And you can see I spent a lot of time on the website to work out what the hell I'm going to talk about. So it's a pretty pickies. And there were several sessions on human diet, and it's health through diet, and it's a real focus for a lot of the Asian presenters. How do we actually have healthier populations? And that comes through all the way through to its nutrition, but its sustainability of production as well. So, you know, what Melissa was talking about, what's the marketing strategy for some of these things? But a lot of it was around these one-on-one meetings. And anyone who's ever done these one-on-one meetings, it's a real hit or miss. They have an app, you book a company to go and talk to, and you can be sitting at a table for 20 minutes by yourself because no one else has looked at the app. But this is where the business was happening, and this was 3 days of constant meetings all day that people were doing. So another feature of this, there was a lot of startup pitching. So they had short pitches from startup companies. They had competitions for startups going on in several areas. And a lot of these companies were pitching things like future-proofing through innovation. And you've got a number of companies that will be talking about what they're doing in that space. So innovation came up a lot. What's new, what's exciting, what can you justify? I was just going to pick on one particular part of this because I spent a bit of time talking to these. Interestingly, Yield Lab is a venture capital group worldwide, and they brought a number of their startups to Singapore and had them all in this one corner. And were basically, there was a big room of booths and things. And so they were basically pitching these different companies. These are very different companies under their umbrella. Lightgrow is a banana extract company for a product that increases microbial biomass. Biotic is a bio-based bioplastic company out of Israel. Rebio is a food waste company that takes food waste and turns it into ingredients for food and alternate foods. So it's basically a version of, you know, making meat patties out of soya bean, but it does it with waste products. Pyrone was a pesticide company based on green chemistry, and Umani is a seafood company, sustainable production of seafoods and promising free. And this is what it was like. There was all these different ones. So sustainable inputs was a feature. Biostimulants came up a lot. Precision fermentation as a bottleneck for production came up from a lot of people speaking. And sustainability overall was a key theme. I've had to hurry up. So global trade. So it was very much about this public-private partnership approaches, especially to funding and investment. There was the convergence of digital technology, financial tools, and policy frameworks. And that's something we're lacking in this country. is a framework for how everything's going to work together to get to this point. You know, finance is treated very separately to the science and to startups, for example. Resilience and competitiveness are interdependent drivers of future agri-food success in Southeast Asia. And I thought that was a very good quote. So the two can live side by side. Said, financing came up, and some ways that you can finance startups and things like that. Blended finance, concessional capital from governments, development of finance institutes or donors with private investment is leading to TIMEX de-risking projects and unlocking sustainable growth. So they understand that the finance is going to drive the success of what they're trying to do. A few takeaways. It's a good focal point. And you see I've rearranged their key themes into what's basically a flow. And so it is a whole system that they're looking at. Very clear government goals. Southeast Asia problems, so food wastage, aging population, new crop needs, and I've put disruption to disruption. That should have said disruption to supply chains. Financing arrangements can be blended. Companies are profiling their sustainable development goals, so they're profiling sustainability. And one of the interesting one was for Lincoln Agritech, we were very interested in whether people care about microplastics, because we found in New Zealand it's not a great selling point if we're going to avoid microplastics. Huge issue for the rest of the world. And so we do have to think globally on a lot of these things. Enterprise Singapore are a very welcoming organisation. This is a government-funded organisation that helps make links between research and development groups with companies, and very happy to connect New Zealand research groups or companies to Singaporean companies. And we actually talk to them quite a lot, and they've already followed up with us and given us a couple of really good leads. And just to prove I was there, I was watching the video, and there I was. That one.
Thanks, Travis. I was lucky enough to spend a week in Singapore earlier this year with Food HQ. They took a group of agribusiness people there, and I think some of these messages came over quite strongly. New Zealand is seen very favourably in Singapore because we kept supply lines open during COVID, and I think there was a lot of gratitude for our approach of not closing up orders and keeping all the food from sales. So I think that's great. And also, I think the point you got that Enterprise Singapore, that's very clear, is they have a kind of a without orders view to innovation. So they actually support innovators from other countries and will incubate them in Singapore as a way of actually generating some of these innovations that work and help them hit the 30 by 30. But we heard a lot about that when we were there. And I think the single purpose was really important there as well, because we went right through from those developing alternative proteins to vertical farming to incubators, and everybody understood the message, right? Everyone understood that they were trying to boost their food production, and they're all doing it in their different ways. And of course, they were spending a lot of money supporting that. But I thought that was really clear, and one thing we all took back. Any questions for Travis quickly? Yeah.
I was wondering, regarding the goals for the future by Singapore government, have they mentioned anything in terms of fiber, or was it mostly protein?
It wasn't that specific. We were at it was a food summit, so it was very much that was about food, but it does go broader. Yeah, it was what I put up there was really the level we were getting from the minister. I don't like it, I can understand it.
I'm just checking, is it anybody from the government or from the local government space here? Because it seems quite aspirational, like having a really clear direction.
Yes.
There's no dictatorship.
I'm guessing there's not. So that's something that maybe we need to.
Yeah, and that was a really clear. Yeah, it was a really clear message when we came back from our field trip to Singapore. Was that clear message and the support behind it and the research behind it. And a lot of the work that's going on in Singapore is about alternative proteins and precision fermentation, and it was much more that than, I guess, about the fiber side. The right through was how do we replace this? So,
Travis, you talked about human health and food related issues. Here at Lincoln University, we have a professor that is a little bit different, called Pablo Gregorini, who has created this integral health farm, where basically the proteins that he's producing at his farm, proven by clinical trials, would actually increase animal health. How, now the difficult question comes, how would we actually take those research advances, right, that you could argue that are still very much early stage, how can we actually translate that into one of those trends that you saw creating healthier foods? Lisa?
Well, we're doing a data project with Pablo to actually make that accessible. So how do you take the research? We've sucked in as much research as we can find on what he's done, as well as what else is out there, started to data model that and allow people to start to put their own data in to determine if they meet the requirements for health. So it starts to democratize that research and make it usable. So it's still early days, but yeah, that's in case I even missed it, data.
Thanks, Melissa.
Okay, one more question. Yeah,
so thanks for your presentation. I'm just wondering, maybe I missed this. Was there much discussion there about the sort of urban horticulture, vertical farming?
I didn't hear presentations on that, but I didn't go to every presentation. Certainly, the minister intimated that that was part of the landscape because they're so land restricted, and that they were going to set up some pilot facilities where companies could come into one spot, share resources, and I understood that vertical farming was part of that.
We invested a lot in vertical farming in Singapore, and I noticed actually one of the companies that banked up last week, and she was kind of interested.
Yeah, I was just wondering what kind of space doing.
Yeah, I think it's Chad. We went to visit one when we were there, and they've expanded very fast. And one of the ways they were supporting it is because obviously land is very, very expensive in Singapore, so they were granted it a very low lease to actually make it affordable so that they could use it for that rather than a 32-story apartment block or whatever it was. So they've been supporting that. But I think from what I've been reading last week or so, I think they're finding it quite challenging, even with that level of support, to get it actually viable, I think.
I do wonder whether Singapore power is going to be expensive. Went up.
Energy is another real challenge for them. I mean, again, that's
the biggest issue with vertical farming is LEDs are not 100% efficient, so there's still a lot of heat being produced in these growth chambers. So that means you need to start cooling. Normally, normally when you cool, you create heat, and that heat has value as well. But in countries like Singapore, it has not. With a very high electricity price, it basically means that your business model is really challenging.
And do you know what the main energy sources are in Singapore? Are they just running on petroleum products?
Oh, it's oil, wasn't it? I think. Yeah, I think. Yes, yeah. I mean, they've got plans for renewables as well, but they haven't got a huge amount of it. I think they've got the largest refinery in the world there, or something. I don't know, but it's pretty big. I mean, what I came back from there was, and you were talking about the money, and someone saying when they're going overseas and finding, Singapore's got a lot of capital and no land. We've got a lot of land and no capital, and somehow I think meeting these two together is potentially a very viable thing for us. Good thing. Okay, well, thanks, Travis. Free panel section for the end, just to hopefully pick up on some of the themes that we've talked about and just go into a little bit more detail and give people a chance also to raise questions and issues that they have. So Joya is going to do that. I might go and get some stools so they can sit up the front here.
Probably I was going to say, otherwise we can drag chairs. So maybe give us a few minutes to set up. So talk amongst yourselves. You haven't introduced yourself at the table. That was good. Thank you, everyone. We're actually going to open up to the floor. I've got a couple of questions myself, but I would like to open up in case there's specific questions for the speakers today or just anyone in general. So please feel free to raise your hand if you've got any questions. that come to mind? Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Just have a simple question like about their clips, plastic clips. Oh.
Similar plastic, I assume.
So, what? How is the cost of your project compared to the previous ones that were used before?
So it's about a cent different. So 1 cent different per clip. So obviously the raw material is more expensive.
Yeah.
And it works out to be about a cent. So for some people, that's nothing. But for a majority of the vineyards or the major companies, that's actually a real big deal because over the volume that they use.
What's the percentage of the value of a clip?
Yeah, like how much is the total? 5 cents?
Yeah. It's like it's point. How much is it to?
0.03.
0.03 of a cent each.
Right.
So yeah. Yeah, I mean they're not high value. So we're using a high tech, high investment, high R&D thing into a low cost product, which is like nonsensical. But the very good reason for that is because the processes, the IP, the techniques, everything we've used about that's going to be used in other things. It's all part of the end game.
Do you got any traction with bread companies?
Yeah.
Bread bags? Is that the same thing? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole story about that. The simple fact is a cent extra on bread bag is too much over the volume that they do. So they love it. I mean, this time last year there was a social media campaign by random to move over the bread clips to our product, which was interesting. So we've had several conversations with them, and we're just in this continuous loop of this is the cost. So yeah.
Some of them now use cardboard.
Yeah.
Some of them, because it doesn't have to be. I mean, it doesn't have to keep it stable as much as.
But I think it's, you're thinking bread clip. Mine end up in the rubbish bin at home.
Yes.
So,
At some point, someone has to pay more to get it going. Even in a man, less volume, when it's a bit more mature, then maybe the costs come down. But someone has to pay more, either they're forced to pay more, so regulatory changes, or their consumers are conscientious enough to pay more.
Yeah.
Maybe in our market it's different in Europe.
And the volume is nuts. Like the amount of bread loaves that we do. And then talking to their teams, they then turn around and go, well, what about bread bags? And then it just snowballs from there.
I'm Arun, and I got a question from Travis. That suppose if there are some investors from overseas and they want to invest in New Zealand or they want to buy the products, which product do you think are unique from New Zealand that can have a very good market in Southeast Asia and other places? Because yesterday I had one discussion with one investor from Malaysia, and he was interested to invest and also to buy some product from New Zealand. So he have pointed out Manuka honey and few other things, but because I was away from New Zealand, so I don't know all the ingredients that are specific in New Zealand that can find the market.
I think what we need to get away from, which we always talk about, is commodity selling. That we need to be selling into that sort of upscale protein, human health. We've got great marketing potential from New Zealand. Everyone sees it as clean green. That's a great starting point for the story. But all that we saw in Singapore was about sustainability, human health through nutrition, basically alternate proteins. The other area that Agritech's very interested in is waste valorization, because it's like they really Singapore was great for it's running out of the one landfill they've got, which is actually an island they're creating offshore. And so they really need to reduce the amount of waste that's going into landfill. So anything in that space, I think we can be quite good at. That's a very personal view.
The question to that.
Just touching on what Alan was saying before about the also you Travis about you know, we've got the land, no capital. They've got the capital, no land. I mean, what's the opportunities to? I mean, we've got a government that talks the talk, but not walking the walk. In other words, trying to get investment for development of research and the like is incredibly difficult. You know, in fact, in real terms, it's probably gone backwards. 20%. You know, from where we were maybe in the certainly the 2000s and 90s. But is there, should we be working on channels to try and get some capital from places like Singapore? I mean, they're not going to put in money into blue skies type of stuff, but if there's a workable product, then maybe and they see an opportunity for it to work in their environment, then what are the opportunities, do you think?
It's an interesting one. That's why we were in Singapore. We're looking for investment opportunities. Singapore sent several delegations down to New Zealand looking at whether they could have Singaporean food companies setting up in New Zealand because of our commodities to ship. They found that power and water are a big issue here. Supply of power and water for the sort of scale of production that they'd like to do. So I think we've got another problem that's really at government level is we just don't have sufficient energy at the moment for scale.
Add to that, it's not necessarily which color of government, it's just that it's so flip-flop.
Oh yeah.
So then, and you can, I'm in the raising capital game, and like smart money has left the building.
Yeah.
And they've just gone, well, I don't know that place, and I don't really know what's going on there, so I'm out. So that's kind of the like.
That's why you need to cultivate those.
Yeah. The other thing too, like I said before, that innovation necessity, having Singapore realizing that it would be a hotbed if all the ingredients exist, but there's a lot of apathy here, and so we don't really have that kind of like hunger to innovate because we've kind of always got fruit on the trees and cows in the paddock. And so are we a good place to put capital is the thing we have to really put a start light back on ourselves and go, is that true? And if you were the person giving capital, would you give it to us? Are we hungry enough? That's kind of the thing.
I was interested to know more. You mentioned around the frameworks that Singapore has in place and that convergence of the policy frameworks and settings and the finance and R&D. Were there any insights or any takeaways or anything that would be a gold nugget for us to start with? Yeah.
But they have several either government or semi-government investment groups. So Enterprise Singapore, I think, is quite effective. Working with them, they really go in the way to try and help. But there's what's the big investment?
Based on
Temasek. So they've got a big, basically, a capital investing company called Temasek that has a whole lot of companies that they invest in to get things going. So an awful lot of it, they just do capital better.
Just on the capital thing, I don't know how many of you realise how much money's flowing in at the moment. So under the resident program, where you buy residency with $5 million, under that program, this last count I saw there was $980 million fund available under Invest New Zealand for funding. So what they're doing is they're pooling the 5 million into a series of funds, and the BNZ Bank is actually, along with Invest New Zealand, are in charge of the investment. And it's quite a good area for raising capital if you can do it, because you've got people who are just literally they've got enough money, 5 million, they don't give a shit about where it goes. And it's all a relative thing for investment. If you look at some of the investment coming into the country at the moment from overseas, it's all relative. But yesterday there was a whole round of Series A, and you're talking about $17 million investment. So it is out there. The biggest problem, the difficulty with like Singapore, it's where you go, how you go, where you find it. It's all, you got to be in the click, you got to be in the know, you got to be in the talking to the right people. I mean, if it wasn't for our Ice House in this country, and K1W1, a lot of these startups wouldn't be getting any funding whatsoever. But it is out there, but it's you just got to tap into it, and it's very hard. But that 980 million pool, that's a game changer for New Zealand. It just needs to be released.
Yeah, because I understand that the deployment of it has not been so good. So
I was not going to be a negative Nancy, but what he's and it usually goes into the very least because they have two choices: invest direct or go into mutual stock market sort of funds, managed funds. And most of it goes to managed funds. You have to put more in, but it's not a high risk. So
steering it to the innovation,
to the
areas potentially very high growth. I think it is key. But as I understand it, it hasn't happened so much as opportunity, but
it's quite anticlimactic.
Yeah, unfortunately. and we're in the capital raising area for a little bit of time, and there are some options, but as you say, there's the number of options is just small. You run out of options pretty quickly, markets such as Singapore and how they connected to other geographical regions just opens up so many more opportunities, which is a real shame if it ends up with the benefit. Yeah, exactly. Control everything going offshore.
And the media doesn't help. You look at the paper and on stuff. Oh, we've lost $2 million on this investment. The world's going nuts. We've wasted all this. They never report on the good stuff. They're always reporting on the failures, which doesn't kind of promote it.
Yeah, I know. There's a comment on that. I think cultural attributes that we have is poor tolerance of
risk.
Yeah, and poor tolerance of failure.
Yeah.
So we're in the innovation area and startup area, and there are a million reasons why it's not going to work. There's only one sequence of dots where it is going to work, and so things fail often, the badge that goes with that. Here is bad in the US, for example. It's not bad. It's not. Yeah, okay, not it's going to fail the whole time, but having the odd failure that's learning. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
In the US.
Yeah, one thing I add is that even the intolerance to failure is even worse for academics. So if they invest $100 in an academic research, I mean, we know startup, 90% of startup fails. It's accepted. You put $2 million in a startup, it fails after 5 years. You give $200 to an academic and they just publish 2 papers. Oh shit, that was a terrible investment. Just wanted to say that. Yeah, I know. They do. We do. Academics. Yeah.
Just building on that, in terms of our future innovators, what characteristics do you think they have, and where can tertiary institutions help that?
I'm just going to clarify the question. What characteristics do the people coming through have?
The people that you see would be our future innovators, and there's a few of you certainly there. What are the, we've talked about, what the New Zealand characteristics don't help, but what sort of characteristics would you see or attributes in our future innovators?
So we've got, and it's only a recent thing for us, we've had quite a few students through and done quite a bit with students coming in. Holy moly, they're good. This whole GZ thing, the latest one we've got in, like Stephen's smart. Like he's got double majors, he's done this and he's done that, and he just goes, this guy is better than him. And he said, holy moly, he is smart. So from a quality point of view, I can't rave high enough about it. And in our group, in our mahi-tahi, we've had students come straight out of university with these big ideas, and they've thrown everything at it. they haven't all come off, but they're actually out there actually doing it, which is at times, I normally refer to them as the kids. I refer to the kids, and I go, and just hats off to them. So the way they're coming out, their ambition, their goal setting, their ability for the end game. Where they lack is the commercial reality of life in New Zealand, and we are losing a lot of talent overseas. Just about everyone we've brought through, we've gone, yeah, this is cool, we want to keep you, and they're like, no, we're off.
Give us a job.
Yeah. But it's really that commercial that we don't live in. We have to work within the constraints that we have. But yeah, I've got to say this whole thing about Gen Z. Everyone I know in that age group, they just blow my mind.
Make an additional comment. So a couple of things. We are working with students who are, as he said, whizzes. So UC data science students. Yep. They are just amazing. Not from here. So foreign students. Interesting to observe. I don't know if that's consistent. That's just one data point I have. Secondly, resilience. So I employ some people and I have interaction with students. Hurt feelings is a big thing, and I think the fragility in between the ears is quite a high element. So if I were to be provocative, I think you should play rugby and get smashed around a bit and go farming and then try to innovate, because there's a real biophysical reality that doesn't care about your feelings when you're farming, and there's a few people on the other side of that line that don't care about your feelings, and I think that kind of starts to, like, if we were to embrace some of those things, it changes the characteristics of the people that we're bringing through, right? That's kind of just to not that that's true, but like just as a context, you can see what I mean by the resilience, the ability to stick with it. And then the commercial reality is the other thing I would say about that is the ambition is there. I have AI tools, so I should be able to do it is there. And then when you get knocked down because, I don't know, the world, that sort of starts to like chip away at the confidence, and we need people who can kind of persevere through that and see. There was a mentor, someone, Joel Salatin, does anyone know Food Inc? It was like the first of the food movies that came out before it was a thing. And he said, anyone who comes to the farm must first figure out why the fence is there before telling us the fence has to go away. So that's kind of how I would see that, kind of seek first to ask questions, understand why it is there. If there's no good reasons, take it away. If there is good reasons, then leave it there.
Can I just add one point about the resilience? Because I work with them and I work with a lot of students. It has inspired me to actually do this more prototype making stuff. One of the things that I think it's now a challenge is that we don't want to actually understand. I mean, the world is changing like this. I'm not that old, or at least I don't consider it that old. But in my lifetime, we went from no internet to now AI telling me from my watch that the temperature of my body is more than my normal day because I was working in the garden. So like the change is so much, but we still, the government here says social science, these amazing people are not real scientists, but who should understand that what's the effect of social media? What's the effect of this connectivity? Every second, bang, bang, bang. I used to go biking. My mom wouldn't hear from me in the next 2 hours. Now they're in their pocket. The mom follows them where they go. And so it's like they follow them, like it's so much pressure, and they see their mate is in having fun. They're sitting home doing nothing. It's just
have like a perfect
there's so much
millennials raising people,
yeah, exactly. It's just like
pretty privileged era, then now being helicopter.
and then everybody complains why young people don't have proper mental health because nobody cares about them. You know, they're just sitting there, everybody pointing finger at them. Oh, sorry. I wish about it.
I just add a last point on that, maybe the resilience and the characteristics of younger people coming through, and I'd agree with all of the things that have been said, and I would add, maybe expand on what you were saying, but add real purpose to that, as in not just the passion and desire to make a difference in whatever the chosen field is, or but the purpose and even the obligation to make a difference in the world, and the need to have that purpose, because it is odd and it's vastly beautiful and commercially here, but the purpose of understanding that no, I've got ideas and they are possible. Okay, I've got to figure out the route, but I can and need to carry on to do this. I think that's really important to make innovation stick.
I just wonder, so in manufacturing maturity models and in software maturity models, you talk about a 4-step process, and the first step is called individual heroics. And this idea of students being innovative, I'd really challenge, and I'd say they're inventive, not innovative. It's easy to be creative, and so much we're talking about here today is around innovation. And yet the kind of points that Travis has made around the Singapore project is around supply chain, security of supply, and those kind of things, which is not a lab-driven problem. And I think we're really confusing inventive, creative process and coming up with products. It's different to being able to do the innovative process, which is wrap the supply chain, wrap the other commercial offerings around them in order to take them to market. And every time I hear talk of students and their energy, I think individual heroics, which is a startup first step. What I want to know is, how do we do scale up? How do we take those next steps where we're not reliant on individual heroics? We have strong processes and tools and an offering that is durable and sustainable over time.
What you're pointing to, though, would be a skill set in communication and influence, and that to bring a lot of people on.
And I think commercial modeling.
Yeah, of course, but you can have all the commercial models in the world, and if you don't get the guy across the table to agree to it, it's a good idea, you're getting it right. And so that's kind of what I see as falling massively away due to the thumbs in our hands and the stuff on our wrists and the things, right? And so that skill set, you ask me what the universities can do, take your phones away from you, make them look each other in the eye. Like, it is a bizarre thing to say, but that I observe is falling away. The ability to influence, even when I'm hiring project managers, I now have to put like super nerdy developers, and I have to have like the human head that talks to the other human head. And so that's kind of nothing gets done, and you can have all the AI in the world, and maybe we'll get there, but I just don't. I think that what AI has actually shown us is that we now need more human skills, and that's kind of like so that's what I'm saying, is just not a lot of human skills, and you can see it in dating. People are rubbish at dating.
I would add on that, if you look,
it appears in some ways that New Zealand's on an endless treadmill. We've got great innovators, we've got great ideas, and it's a real battle to get things flying. And as soon as it gets flying, as soon as it gets some sort of international dominance, the big hand of internationals come and take it away. And we end up like Frontiera. We built Frontiera, and now we're just supplying raw materials into Frontiera. We've done a whole step backwards, and that just keeps happening. And as soon as like Allflex, coming back to Clips, Allflex gone. Anything that hits world domination is taken away, and we just keep this constant treadmill of innovating.
You know why that is, though? So, like, as a person who's innovating, and I would say not, actually doing value chain stuff, there's no money for me here. And the moment I get money, the government wants its pound of flesh. And I've been told specifically, actually, that's not a great place to invest because of all kinds of contextual reasons. So people like me that stick my head out can't get money, so I have to go overseas, and then I'm owned by another company. So it's a complex beast. I don't disagree, but I think what we have created is the conditions for that to continue to be true. And we have to look at the conditions we create that would make that less true.
But even if we have Singapore comes in, we're just going to supply raw material to a foreign company again. We're still no better.
So in the food context, apologies. We are a country that celebrates mutton and milk powder, and we have it at our dinner tables. We are not France. We do not eat fancy cheeses, and we do not celebrate our own food. And so it first has to come from our own pride, and we are not proud of our innovators until they've made it, and we are hard on them until they've made it. We are hard on our farmers until they've made it, and that is very hard to operate. And so, of course, you get very burnt. And I'm at this place right now where I'm kind of like, ugh, I'm actually not going to be here once I get money. It's too hard. And so the context, if you want to know where to start, be proud of the people when they're nobodies. Be proud of the stuff that we create. Start building and buying local food, understanding what's happening here. Look at the innovation, buy the clips, buy the protein powder, right? Like that sort of stuff is just not happening. And that to me is the thing that if we have local pride, we can sell internationally. If we don't, we will leave.
Sorry, just to add to that, one of the interesting things and why I'd like what these kids are doing with the innovation. Steve Wilson from New Zealand Product Activator, if you ever hear him talk, you know, you look at the amount of patents that New Zealand's developing. We're not actually innovating in this country at the moment. It's dropped off a cliff. So I think that's we're thinking that there's a lot actually going on, and there is. I mean, I see it every day. But in reality, the amount of patents, the amount of IP protection, and that's going on has fallen off the cliff. The other thing, going back to what you were saying before, the definition of innovation that we use around work is creative. Curiosity breeds creativity, which breeds innovation. So just the fact that these kids are showing some curiosity and around it and wanting to learn, not having to learn, not being told to learn, actually have the curiosity around it. That's a big starting point when I see the kids. Because if you've got no curiosity and you've got no creativity, you're not going to innovate. It's just not going to happen. You need all that across there.
Question around governance. So there was a situational experience that I went through where I was trying to find out how do you actually get onto the board of an organisation that is actually directing strategy and funding to the sector, and was actually no clear path. What do you think? Yeah, it was very opaque as to how they're appointed. What do you think the role of governance and leaders setting that agenda around risk and I guess the agenda for the CEO is? How do you think that can help with innovation in the bioeconomy space?
So yes, it is okay. The comment I would make, risk is being redefined before our eyes, I would say. And so I've kind of got this image where like the cart is currently pushing the horse on technology. And so the future is coming faster at boards than ever before. And as a broad brushstroke, boards have been conditioned, I guess, to look at risk more in a back-facing kind of way. And so that's why you have your accountants and your lawyers and and so if you leave your accountants and your lawyers in charge of your company, it's well known it'll just end up slowly dying. So you need that kind of like different risk voice at the table. However, I don't know that we have, the other part of governance is actually, it's meant to be sort of operate like a cohesive unit, right? Like you have many voices to make up one decision person, right? And in order for governance to be effective, you actually can't have too much sort of discourse between it and disagreement, right? And so it's healthy to have that, but getting the right mix of people and the right skill sets, and it comes back to what I said before, is the communication ability is fascinating. And I'm currently on a board, have been on boards, and I find it that it is not really yep, sure, you need to understand risk, but it's actually more of a lesson in influence and understanding how do you influence other people around you and how do you get your message across. And that, I think, is the technology, the future pacing is really showing up. The current pool of directors, not all of them, but some of them that don't really know how to influence and understand and reframe risk as opportunity sometimes, right? And so I think we're going to need to shift how we think about that. But I do think there's some work to be done there.
Just on that, the purpose of the board is to set the strategy. and it's the purpose of everyone below to execute it. In reality, how often does that actually happen? It's really it's actually working the other way, and that causes all sorts of friction and trouble within boards. And
what is a strategy? Half the time people have a plan.
Yeah.
It's actually, you have to, the litmus test is, if the opposite of this is just a dumb idea, do you have a strategy? No. So you have to kind of think about, okay, you've got Richie McCaw and Dan Carter on your team. How do you play the game? If you don't have Richie McCaw and you don't have Dan Carter on your team, how are you playing the game? That's kind of the strategy, is like, we're at the bottom of the world. I'm not sure if you noticed. We have different cost structures. How do we play the game? That has to be taken into consideration.
And selecting, if you're a founder and you've got, you're getting a board, selecting the right board members is probably the most critical thing that you can do for the future of your business.
The path to getting there, being a candidate for directorships and so on, I think is not clear. It's really fine, but in the startup level, it's private individuals and one or two investors are putting money in. That's not that's a bespoke selection, knowing, and the founders involved knowing that if they make the wrong choice, it's going to kill the business, and it's going to be really hard to change it. So it's a very, very careful selection process. So I think with your question, I think, was about boards in more funding decision-making areas, maybe the government and others. That I see that essentially as a very different process. They're not private directorships.
I think between the lines, I was actually hinting at the old boys club, like where there's sort of gatekeepers that have had control sort of over things for a long, long time, and there's a real resistance to actually changing, and it's very unclear how to actually get the influence.
Yeah.
Because the pathways are so.
I think two things can be true at once, and I'm kind of like into that. Like, I'm just sort of like with axes and picks trying to figure out what is the situation, and is that the old boys club, or am I making that up? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And I have had people who look like old boys clubs be like just undying champions of mine, and I have had people who don't look like old boys clubs who actually look like me be barriers. So it's a bit of a person to person kind of like who is keeping status quo, and I kind of like to look at it more of you have to take each human on merit, and what is each human bringing to the table, and are they more interested in the status quo and maintaining their position, or are they open to having a discussion? Do they have the robustness of character to sit across the table and be disagreed with? That's kind of
we got time for one. I think we actually can come to a natural end, which is actually really nice and right on time. So that's perfect.
Any question asking?
No, I didn't ask any of my questions. But thank you so much, everyone. Give everyone a round of applause. Thank you. The nice round way to basically end the session. So maybe Alan, going to come up here as well. We can say thank you to everyone and hope everyone to stay in touch, because this has been a really nice event, I think, and really a great way to collaborate between institutions, and something I think we can continue to do in the future. Considering the space is very much emerging, as everyone's talking about, and very much rapidly changing, whether it's tech, whether it's demand, or whatever else is going on. So
yeah, great. Well, thanks very much to the panel there.